This piece is called Mother. It's about Gaia caring for her blind child human. So this is the ZBrush file. The model is symmetrical and the hands and arms are posed early on. I wanted to do that because I wanted to see the interaction between the hands and the body of this little guy. So at first, only these two things are posed, and the rest of the model is symmetrical and in a neutral pose. It's done for more comfortable texturing. Later, I repose this model and then I put all of my textures on top of the posed model. So this is the Substance Painter file. And I'm gonna show you my material setup. It's fairly simple. So this is the diffuse material from ZBrush, and I added levels, added lighter areas, and put back the edge wear from iron old material. Added golden statue material, and I deleted everything else except corrosion. Added more dirt. Added brass material, changed the base color and just painted it in selected areas. So I would have this bit of variety. And added these darker areas. I painted them on normal layer just to get this breakup. And it would look a little more natural with it. And the rest of the model was done in the same way. It's a fairly simple method. I just used these standard materials, smart materials. I tweak the mask on each of those. So this grunge mount, wear level, wear contrast to get the look that I want. And yeah. And for them not to look like a standard smart material. So after this, I export all of my textures and I go back to ZBrush, I pose it, and I export the pose model into Blender, import all the textures from Substance Painter into Blender with this node setup. The good thing about Blender is you can click on this principal BDSF, press Ctrl-Shift-T, and then just select all of your textures, and it's going to connect it for you. So it's going to connect this diffuse map into base color, specular, metallic, roughness. It's all done by Blender. I didn't do anything here. And it really speeds up your workflow because you don't have to connect it one by one. So that's the lighting setup is fairly simple. I pretty much use the same lighting setup. It's just a light shining from the top. What I do as well is I use this color management from Blender because I want to cut out all of this diffuse lighting. So I just put it on RRT and get these deep shadows. You can experiment with the different looks here. Oh, that looks cool. Or you can do all the post-processing afterwards in Photoshop. For me, it's important to be inspired by the renders, and I don't know, this looks a little flat. I don't like all this diffuse info. So this is better for me. And later in Photoshop, I just add bloom, sharpen it a little bit, and that's it. The next piece is called Dreamer. It's about a child who's being devoured by his dreams. This is what ZBrush file looks like. Again, sculpted in symmetry. The cloak is sculpted in ZBrush. The embroidery is inspired by Art Nouveau, so all the flowy shapes. And the legs, I realized that at the final render, the legs are not visible at all. So I did not want to waste all the effort, so I reused the same legs on the next project. It's called Syrin, so I stretched them, changed them a little bit, and yeah, those are the same legs. So this is the post version that I'm gonna be exporting into Blender, and it has the same file names as the low poly version that I'm gonna be texturing in Substance. So let's look at the Substance Painter file. That is the Substance Painter file. Let's go through the material. Again, this is the bronze armor. I took the standard material and I changed the base color, so this base metal. Probably tweaked some dirt levels, all that stuff. I added some more dirt. So here, painted this brass material. Added the dirt with the mask. So if you go into smart masks, you can add this. Oh yeah, it's a dirt mask. Ooh, it's laggy. So yeah, this dirt. So I used this. I added a little bit more. These colors in the cavities, so it's probably cavity rust. And I changed this base color and tweaked the mask. And lastly, this one is, I took the pores, I think, from the skin material, and I just added them onto metal, so to make them a little rougher, and it looks more natural this way. For these stripes, I used particles. So if you go to shelf particles, there is different kinds of particles. So I used this organic splash, probably. Yeah, organic spread. And if you go to here and then click it, you'll see how the particles are going to grow. Like this. So I put them on the bottom and then I cleaned them up by painting them by hand. And that's the whole being devoured motif, because it started from the hands. So the hands are consumed in gold, and then probably the body inside, and then it goes to his head. So that's the Substance Painter file. Again, as with the previous project, I export all the textures. I take this version in ZBrush. I import it into Blender. I put all of my lights, different cameras. So this is the lights, one here, one here. And let's see what it looks like here. So that is the version. And in Photoshop I add a little bit more bloom and sharpen it, and that's it. As you can see, it's very close to the final version. This last artwork is called Syrin. It's a Russian version of a siren, and I want to have my own take on this mythological creature. So let's have a look at the ZBrush file first. This is the unposed version of it, and as you can see, it looks quite weird and flat. It's quite uninspiring. So early on in the process, I merged everything and made a pose for it to have an attitude. And looking at this kind of motivated me to continue doing it, because now it has more attitude. Like, even without all the details, it still has this like predatorial look. This is the posed version that's going to be exported into Blender. And as you can see, these are the legs from the Dreamer. The Substance Painter file has all the poly painting imported into it from ZBrush, and the masks itself are quite simple. It's basically a diffuse map with a little bit of grunge and some metal texture on it. I wasn't very satisfied with this result, so I ended up just having a blue light and to have a unified look of this picture. So again, I exported all of that, took this posed version, and imported it into Blender. So in Blender, what I did, I used this light setup. It looks quite complicated. I used this plugin. It's called Pro Lighting Studio, and it allows you to switch different light setups. And I really love it because you can just quickly change different lights and see the model in a different way. So these lights are connected to this bounding box, so I rotated it. And let's unpause it and see what it gives me. So this is the look. For this one, I have not used the color correction because all the lights were quite bright anyways. So what tends to happen when I'm looking at these Blender renders, they have a little bit of noise in them even when they're fully rendered, because preview render has something like 32 samples, and when we have the final image, it looks quite boring. It's too clean. And I wanted to show my Photoshop setup on this one, because as you can see, all of these values are similar, so I cannot read all of that. So her headpiece is similar in value as the hand on the back. So what I did is I added a little bit of grunge to have this kind of like a visual noise. Added stars, curves helped quite a bit. I brought back the reds on the dreadlocks, darkened the area. For this one I used this blend if option. So basically you put this dark area and then you drag an underlying layer, so the lights from the underlying layer are going to show through. And if you click Alt and then drag this little guy, and it's gonna soften the mask. So I did this. I separated these areas as well, so now they're very readable. I added some bloom, and that's it.